All right. Start off with a quick statement about the Wyoming game, and then we'll move on. Obviously a hard-fought victory. I thought it was a little bit. I don't know that they score if we don't turn the ball over, and that was one of the things that we talked a lot about this week. And Carter's got to do a better job of ball security. Chuba had one that he put on the ground prior to the touchdown that we scored at the end of the first half, and so that's something that we cannot do this week for sure, is put the ball on the ground and give them opportunities, especially on a short field. Was really proud of the way our defense continues to play at an elite level. I thought it was another really good plan by Kane and the defensive staff. And I also thought that we stuck to the plan on offense. I think that, mixing in Chuba more in some of the +1 run stuff was really good against these guys. Eating clock and keeping it a really short game that's another thing that's been good for us. And just, doing what we have to do, whatever it takes to win, and not being selfish as players, realizing that, the game will play out the way the game's going to play out, and you got to do what you got to do in that moment to win the game. And that was certainly something we were able to do. I thought it was a little bit janky at the end of the game, just the way it was officiated. I didn't love that. You'd like to be able to celebrate and enjoy a moment like that a little bit better than we did, because there was a lot of confusion about what was kind of going on at the end of the game. And really, I didn't think the last play should have even happened. I thought the clock had hit 0 before the ball was snapped. And so credit to our guys. I mean, I don't think everybody was playing. I think our D-line thought that the game was over. But Bryson Snelling didn't, and he made a play and made several plays down the stretch. There's one play in particular that I think is probably overlooked, and it was actually the play before the last play. We were in a 0 coverage, and our post safety had the back man-to-man, and he was on the other side of the formation. They were going fast, and it was Hayden McDonald. Kind of had to work his way around the umpire and made like an absolutely textbook tackle on the back in the flat when the quarterback, I think, thought the back was going to be uncovered, and that would have been a walk-in touchdown for him. And he makes not only the tackle, but because he's, Ivy League educated from Columbia, he decides to delay the guy getting up, which continues to eat clock. The guy panics. He throws the ball to the official. The officials prove themselves to be less than stellar athletes by dropping the ball, and then the clock keeps ticking. And so I thought that was kind of an impactful play in the game. Obviously, now we turn the page. It's a big week for the state of Nevada, battle for the Fremont Cannon. Opportunity to get a really, really good UNLV team here in Mackey Stadium on Saturday night at 6 o'clock. I want to encourage everybody out there to enjoy your Thanksgiving and your Black Friday, and then set your alarm to get to Mackey Saturday evening. This is a team that, is one of the top scoring teams in the country. There's a top scoring offense in the Mountain West Conference. This quarterback has a lot of like Diego Pavia in his game. I mean, this guy, he's got balance, vision, strong arm. He's tough. He just makes the whole thing work. But it's helpful when you have the type of talent around him that he has. I mean, he's got some elite wide receivers. He's got a 3-headed monster at running back. They've got an absolutely enormous offensive line. And so this is like a Power 5 type of offensive team in terms of their personnel, and most of them did play Power 5 football. And so they've done a great job of developing a really deep, long, athletic group on the offensive side of the ball. They have, as I mentioned a moment ago, they got this massive alignment. You got all of these weapons, all of this stuff that you have to defend. And that'd be okay if the guy running the show, dealing the cards, wasn't so proficient. And Calandri has done a really good job of that. On defense, they kind of just get better and better each week. Again, they're a very talented group, super fast. Talk a little bit about that on special teams too. They've had tendency to maybe give up some leaky yards in the throw game, in particular where switch seams or flood routes and their eyes aren't in the right place. But you can see they really played well against Hawaii on Friday night, and so that's they're going to have their horns out and be ready for us, I'm sure. And then that team speed creates problems for you on special teams when you've got that athletic of a group, when they're that talented, that fast, that long. That's their 2s and 3s that are playing on special teams are still really, really good football players, and they've created some explosives. In particular against Wyoming, that was a key to the game when they went to Wyoming and scored a couple special teams touchdowns off block punts. So, should be an exciting week of practice and preparation for us. I think our guys obviously have a little bit of momentum coming off of a couple of wins, but this is a team that's found a way to win games, being UNLV, in a variety of ways. And so we're going to have our best on Saturday night, and I expect that. Happy to take any questions. Chris.
Yeah, if you could just speak like to the importance of the Fremont Cannon, I guess how you get that message across to players, given how much roster
Yeah,
turnover
well,
there is nowadays.
I think anywhere it's going to be kind of a little bit different, right? I think we have some unique things here in this building that help us with that. Verge, Coach Alt, Mastro, guys that have lived this rivalry in a really intense fashion. I mean, to a certain degree, created this rivalry in Coach Alt's situation. And I think I think you can lean into it a lot of different ways, right? The Nevada versus UNLV, North versus South. But I kind of lean into it. The way I kind of look at it right now is like, the heck with those guys, man. They got every freaking advantage. Every advantage. It should not be that way. We're in the same state. Okay, I'm paying the same taxes that Dan Mullen is. He's paying a little bit more, right? But ultimately, that's my thing is I got a chip on my shoulder. I got a chip on my shoulder when I walked into Laramie, when I walk into Utah State, certainly when I go down there. I got a chip on my shoulder because I work hard every day to make sure our kids have the best that we can provide them here at the University of Nevada. And, there's just no way that they should have that much more than we have. There's just no way. And so, like I said yesterday, they're Mercedes-Benz or Lamborghini or whatever, man, I'm good being F-150. I'm good being the Ram truck. I'm good having the old beater in the driveway. And they'll see that when they dress in our swimming locker room and, walk across the parking lot into Mackey Stadium. And it's going to look a little different than Allegiant, right? But to me, that's what this rivalry represents in a lot of ways, is it's a clash of cultures. And, Dan Mullen and I come from way different places too. Like he did not grow up in the backwoods of St. Mary's, Idaho. And so, and he didn't cut his teeth coaching high school football in Chalice and Post Falls and Twin Falls and GA when he was 32 years old. And so, I think it's a perfect clash of cultures from the head coach all the way down to, to the gritty dirt on Mackey.
And is that kind of blue versus blue collar matchup? Are you, I guess, expressing that to the players, or is that just something?
Oh, they'll get the message. They'll get the message. Yeah.
You've won a lot of rivalry games as an underdog. I guess what is the key to being able to rise up in the moment and be able to lead a group to a victory that many people think that you can't be able to get?
Well, you got to believe. Yeah, like you got to go into it with a understanding that, hey, you've prepared the right way, and that they have to play the game too. Ultimately, it's not up to us as coaches. Oftentimes, we have to do a good job of putting a good plan together, but it's getting those kids to get in a really good place mentally. And then sometimes it's surviving the initial emotional storm, and sometimes it's just going out and making a play. And once you have that confidence, once you get into the game and you realize, hey, look, yeah, these guys are talented and they're good, but we're not bad either when we bring our A game and we can go toe to toe with these guys. And it's a one-game season in a lot of ways. Like it's like when we were at Boise, we probably couldn't go into the SEC and play Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, but when we played Georgia at the beginning of the year, we took care of business pretty good. That was a one game snippet, and I think that's kind of how you got to look at it. Like, this is our bowl game. This is our opportunity to go out on a high note, and there's a, just like in a bowl game, there's a pretty significant sized trophy that's at stake here.
Have you actually seen that trophy in person?
I have not.
I mean, I know it was like on the field last year, but you guys have a space for it. I was curious if you've actually ever seen it.
No.
You talked about the offense and your defense has played so well. I guess what are going to be the keys to trying to slow down what is the highest scoring offense in the Mountain West?
Yeah, I think our game plan cannot change from the last 2 weeks. Like, this has been a blueprint for us to have some success, which is, trying to possess the ball as much as we can. Our best defense can be our offense at times. Not turn the ball over, win time of possession, play well in special teams, and don't give up the big play. Like, that's kind of been our MO, right? Some teams are going to get some yards here and there, but keep them out of the end zone, force field goals when they're in the blue zone, and do the best job that we can of keeping possession of the football and matriculating it down the field. And that we've done a really good job of that the last 2 weeks, and that's kind of our MO right now, I think.
And you had even mentioned, like, if you didn't turn the ball over against Wyoming, you felt like you guys wouldn't let them score. That's probably a more cautious offensive approach than you would like to take, but I guess is that just the formula you guys are going to have to use and you're seeing success in?
Yeah, I want to win. And, I mean, I know, our receivers probably want to have the ball thrown to them more, and quarterbacks probably want to throw it more, and, some people might want to see an up-tempo approach, but, this is who we are. Right now, this is what Team 119 at the University of Nevada is capable of doing well, which is controlling the ball, playing good defense, and, hoping to create some explosiveness in the special teams area and taking advantage of other people's mistakes. And I think that when we have limited ours, we've been in games all the way down to the wire. And so I think that's kind of our brand right now.
To be able to potentially cap the season on a 3-game winning streak with the Fremont Cannon, I guess what message would that send the players who might be thinking about portal or something like that, just in terms of retention and momentum and trying to keep together the nucleus of this team in 26?
Yeah, I think that there's always the ability to create momentum. I think momentum's more important than record in a lot of regards, right? Because you get to tell your story, and I think that's the story of, hey, look, we've got a renewed passion for the sport of football at Nevada, and we're trending in the right direction, and it helps a ton down the stretch when you have success, because that's the story that you get to tell in the recruiting trail. That's the story that you get to relate to kids when they're talking about their futures. But I think always, anytime, there's programs that you look around the country right now, there's programs that are, if you look at the surface, that are awesome. Things are going good. They're winning, whatever. But there's probably a lot of turmoil underneath. And I think one of the cool things to me about this year, regardless of, how frustrating at times this has been, and is like how resilient these guys have been and how they've stuck together. We got our tails whooped in Logan. And that would have been really easy for these guys to say, we're good, coach. And they didn't do that. And so I think that speaks volumes to what they feel about the program and about each other. And I think if you really want to know what's going on in a program, you don't ask me, you ask the players. And I think that's where those guys would say, like, hey, we're going to be ready to fight on Saturday night.
Do you feel like they're fighting for you and the staff as well? Staying dedicated to the cause, even though things hadn't gone very well through the first 9 weeks?
I don't know. I think you know me well enough to know that, like, I'm not a guy that's going to pat myself on the back, but I don't know a lot of guys could have held this thing together, candidly. And not only have we done that, we found a way to improve. And so that's a tribute to our staff, and that's a tribute to those kids.
I know senior days are a little bit different because you don't have guys for 4 or 5 years, but I guess what will you remember about this senior class? Do any of the individual players in that class kind of stick out in your memory and being important and trying to lay a foundation for the program?
Yeah, well, I think that there's always these guys that are bridge builders, and I see like Thomas Whitty and Mad Dog and Grabby, like those guys are like the bridge builders. They're the guys that are building this bridge that we're going to get across this canyon that has been our pitfalls here, and then when we get on the other side and we're having success, I'm going to be the type of guy that's going to make sure we remember the bridge builders. And I think those are guys that have definitely done that. But there's also, because this portal era is the way it is, I think about, like, one of my favorite guys on this team is DJ Warnell. He's only been here for 6 months, but he's always got a smile on his face. I'm walking through the weight room just now, like he's doing his body maintenance, getting his workout in, and he's just a fantastic teammate. Caleb, this guy's a walk-on who's had such an interesting journey. He's kind of become our bell cow down the stretch here in the season, and there's just a lot of really, Chubba's kind of been this spiritual leader for us. He's handled adversity really, really well in a first-class way. There's just a lot of guys that I just have a ton of respect for and just really appreciate what they brought to the organization. And so it'll be sad to see him go. One of the things that you get to this time of the season, this is the first of many lasts, right? Like, this will be my last Monday press conference. This will be our last Tuesday practice tomorrow, and there's that finality that kind of sinks in on these kids, and especially because the way football and really all sports nowadays have become such a part of kids' identity. This gets hard. This gets emotional in some ways, and so these guys leaning into one another for one more week and just really cherishing and embracing the opportunity to play college football is one of the things I'll talk to them about.
Has there been any anecdotes on people in the community telling you how important this game is and the Fremont Cannon is, and being able to be on top of this rivalry?
I hear it probably 15 times a month, like whether it's at filling up my truck at Costco or walking down the street. You're gonna get that cannon back. And I think that's I get it. But like I said, I've been a part of rivalry games before, and I think I understand it even a little bit better now after being here for a year, and kind of developing my own. That ship is a little bigger now. Like when I'd never been in Allegiant Stadium before we played them last year. I'm like, what the hell? How did this happen? You know, I remember going to Sam Boyd. That was okay. I was all right with that. But that was eye-opening to me.
And say even like a chip when you go into Wyoming, that's because of the facilities and just the things that you see that they have that you want to have.
You've been there, right, Chris? I mean, you don't travel with us anymore. I know you're busy on the weekends, so, but you have, maybe you haven't been there. They actually redid some loge seating. They've got some new upgrades there. Yeah. You want the best for your kids. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a parent, a coach, whatever. You want the best. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating, you know? Like, I don't want to have to show up to a gunfight with a knife every Saturday, you know? Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do. And I was having, talk about a conversation. I had a conversation with Justin Wilcox on Wednesday last week, ironically, okay, about his situation at Cal. We're obviously old friends. I have a ton of respect for him. I think he's one of the best coaches I've ever been around. And that's a hard job. And we share in that struggle together, right? And we've always stayed in touch. When I was at Montana State, he's a fly fisherman. He'd come up, we'd spend 2 or 3 days, and we'd spend a lot of time just talking about head coaching issues, like how do you handle discipline, and hiring guys on staff, expectations, all those things, practice structure. And we were having a conversation about this, and I was like, J-Dub, if you're Ryan Day, if you and Ryan Day switch places, your record's probably identical, right? And he's like, well, if you and Dan Lanning switch places, your record's probably identical. Like, and that's two guys that respect one another, obviously saying it. But what my point is like, there's the modern nature of college athletics has actually eliminated some of the value of coaching because it's become so player oriented. And I think you see that a lot of times in the NFL. Like, the organizations in the NFL are more important than the head coach, right? Like, think about this, okay? I bet if you asked just a random smattering of people who the head coach at the University of Texas was, and asked that same random group of people who the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys was, I bet more people would get Steve Sarkisian right than Brian Schottenheimer. And so that's the day and age that we live in, right? Like, coaches in the NFL are not as powerful, not as recognizable, and in college football it's elevated, right? And now you're getting just this kind of I'm like, who knows what's going to happen January 2nd through the 16th? Like, who knows? This could be everything from, oh gosh, we really got this fixed and now things are a little more normalized, to every kid at every program in the country says, well, I got to test the waters because this agent over here, this person's telling me I need to do it. Like, it could be really crazy. And so I think that's an interesting part of this. And I know I kind of just went on a man. I don't even remember your question, to be honest with you, Chris, but I'm sure you'll ask another one.
Just the chip on the shoulder and how nice Laramie, Wyoming, which I've spent many days at the Applebee's there is. Yeah. The passion and emotion in a rivalry game, you guys have done a pretty good job of not having the penalties that you had last year, I guess. How do you manage that and use it for a positive?
I hope that we play with class and represent the university in a first-class way, and I'm sure Dan wants the same thing for his guys. And so, like, let the emotions be kind of carried out from snap to whistle, if that makes sense, right? And so I also think that it doesn't really do you any good. It usually hurts you in some way, shape, or form, and I think famously there's been some incidents here. Now, I do think that not having to cross paths as you come onto the field will probably help that. Like, that's... Sometimes I always thought like this. There's some recipes for disaster. Like, you play the Red River game. We're in the same tunnel, Oklahoma and Texas. Well, yeah, there's going to be some words exchanged because you're emotionally charged and we're this far away from one another. And so maybe that proximity helps a little bit to kind of dissipate that.
You mentioned Diego Pavia. I wasn't going to ask about him, but I know you guys had a relationship with him, and now he's like a Heisman contender. Are you at all surprised at what he's been able to do in the SEC and in a parallel timeline he may have been here?
Yeah, that one I do. I thought I thought his game was going to be his game no matter what, which it is. But I didn't know if he would physically. He's not a big guy. Like, holding up physically against SEC defensive linemen, that was the only question I had. Like, as far as his ability, and it's not talent, it's purely his will to win. Like, this guy has so much personal drive and competitive spirit, it's like it oozes out of him. And his confidence is contagious. And so I felt like that part of it would be like kind of the magic pill. But the fact that he stayed as healthy as he has, that's the one thing I questioned, whether he would be able to kind of hold up through the rigors of, all those SEC guys going after him.
You mentioned Dan Mullen. I know you guys both coached at Florida, not at the same time. Do you have much of a relationship with him, or?
Yeah, ironically, my relationship with Mullen goes back to when he was on staff at the University of Utah under Urban Meyer, and I was at Utah State. And so we would have to call the state travel agency for our recruiting travel, and I would always end up, I was an aisle guy, Mullen was a window guy, and we'd always end up in the same row because we both recruited in Texas. And so coming and going, we seemed like we were always on the same flight, same seat. And, he'd, have his little, his bowl gifts from the Fiesta Bowl or whatever with, there were DVDs back then. And he'd be like, hey, do you want to listen? I'm like, see, that upset me even then. Like he's always had better stuff than I have. So, no, I that's kind of what I know about Dan, and, got to know him a little bit at Mountain West Media Days, and, have respect for what he's done in his career for sure.
I guess just last one for me. I guess the keys to pulling out this victory.
Yeah, don't turn it over, win time of possession, limit explosive plays.
Any more questions, Coach? How does the locker room atmosphere? How does the locker room atmosphere feel after these last couple wins, and compared to earlier in the season?
Yeah, night and day. Yeah, you go from being in a morgue to a frat party basically. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I think everybody gets a little bit of a peek into the locker room now with the way social media is, and Kate's going to have her camera in our guy's face, and everybody's going to be able to get to see what's going on. And I think that so in a weird way, everybody kind of gets to live that vicariously. After a loss, we don't show off that dejection, but they're equally exciting for sure. One's devastating and one's exhilarating. It's just but it's been fun, and these kids have worked hard for them.